Welcome to From Our Generation, where we uncover the ideas and events that shape the world we live in today. I'm Crom Carmichael.
And I'm Mike Hassel.
Together we'll explore the past to better understand the present, because history isn't just about what happened, it's about how you think about it. Well, Michael, we are going to be pre-recording our next podcast.
I think we are pre-recording as we speak.
You are correct. You are correct.
Once
we're going to do that right now.
Yes.
And so this is because we're not going to be able to do our podcast for this Friday.
Okay.
So this will be this Friday's, which I guess would be April 4th or 5th.
Yes.
So we're going to be doing a pre-recording. So I've read a number of articles recently that that are not necessarily time sensitive, but they are interesting. And I want to just kind of read the headline. And if I need to go a little bit farther into it in order to get your opinion,
okay.
So this is kind of a rapid fire podcast, a little unusual, but we'll see how we think it works.
Okay.
All right. The first one is, here's the title: is Trump does an end around the Senate Democrats by signing an executive order to pay the TSA workers amid the Democrats' partial government shutdown. So the first question is it legal for Trump to pay TSA workers when the money to pay them has not been appropriated?
There's been much done and said about the necessity of Congress, and it is clear in the Constitution that Congress appropriates the money. But, Trump has spent money on lots of different things that were not specifically authorized by Congress.
And what is the argument here on why TSA workers should be paid?
Well, I don't know.
Okay, I do.
Okay.
It's in the article.
Okay.
I'm not. You're the one who's having to respond. I'm the one who has the article. So you're at a disadvantage.
I don't know what he's
sense.
saying is authority.
Yeah, he's saying there's an emergency, a national emergency that has to do with security, and we now have more TSA agents who are not showing up, and this is making our airports less secure, and there may be terrorist attacks, and so he is going to use his power to pay the TSA agents now. And so their checks
let me respond to that.
Yes.
One is I think it's true.
Okay.
It's just a horrible inconvenience and completely unreasonable.
Okay.
But emergency is generally the cry of anybody that wants to suspend the rules.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Now, so here's the next question on this issue. If the Democrats don't like it, what can they do about it?
There's another question. I do not know.
They can sue. The Congress can sue.
Can sue the president?
Sure. The Congress can sue the president. The Senate, the Democrats in the Congress, well, actually, I'm not even sure they could do that because they don't control either the House or the Senate. So what I was trying to get at here is that it would be interesting to see if any Democrat in the House or the Senate would try to sue the president to stop government employee union workers from being paid. I think it would be It'd be very interesting to see if they would actually go to the extent of suing, or if they're going to just allow this to happen, which relieves the burden. By the way, it takes the pressure off of TSA if they're paid. Now, then the next question is, if they don't sue and TSA workers are paid, can Trump announce that there's a national security and border security people need to be paid? You can make an equally strong argument that we need to have secure borders and our border security people need to be paid.
My understanding is that ICE has been funded since last summer with like $90 billion.
The people in the field, the administrative people have not been funded.
Okay.
So that was a distinction I learned about the last 48 hours.
Okay.
Which was now we've talked about that one.
I would make one other point that no matter what happens, it'll be too late. Whatever kind of response, he will pay them. The money will get into their bank accounts.
Well, nobody has sued them, so that money is supposedly going out today.
Well, you could try to sue and stop the money from going out.
No, some judge might pass an injunction.
Okay.
Some judge might do that, but I don't think anybody's going to sue because you have to have standing to sue.
Okay.
Okay. So I don't think anybody's going to sue.
All right.
The next one is I made a prognostication about the SAVE Act that I think is wrong. I said I thought they would do a talking filibuster, and I've learned since I made that statement that if the Republicans invoked a talking filibuster, they would essentially turn the rules of the Senate over to Schumer for as long as the talking filibuster lasts, which might be as much as 60 days. And so that's an impractical thing for Republicans to do that. So the only practical way to get it done is to try to shoehorn elements of the SAVE Act into some spending bill.
It's done by reconciliation?
And do it by reconciliation.
Which only requires 51 votes. Or 51%.
Which requires 50%
plus one.
Right, yes. So that is now, the SAVE Act is now down to that tactic, and whether or not the Republicans will stay united to do that tactic, because recently Fetterman has switched his position and is now siding with the Democrats. So saying
in opposing the SAVE Act.
Opposing the SAVE Act. He had said nice things about it. Now he's not. So there's no Democrat in the Senate.
And just as a reminder, the SAVE Act is the one that requires voter identification.
It requires voter identification, and it requires that you prove that you're a citizen at the time that you're registering to vote. And which by the way, many states
do that already.
Do both of those already, and voter suppression in those states is non-existent. And so the argument that forcing people to do both of those things will depress the vote or suppress the vote is incorrect, because we have enough evidence that for states who require both, and their turnout of registered voters is essentially the same as any other state. This one is interesting. The IOC, the International Olympic Committee, has now ruled that men who are trans are not going to be allowed to compete against women, and they're going to use a very specific test to make sure that every athlete competes against their gender of birth.
It's a genetic test.
It's a genetic test. Mm-hmm. My question is this: will Newsom, the current governor of California, will he announce that Los Angeles will no longer host the Olympics because what Newsom says is discrimination? Because you remember Atlanta did not host the All-Star game over something to do with voting, some voting rules that, and the baseball commissioner said we're not going to have the All-Star game there. And so my question is, will Newsom?
I think it was over a voter ID requirement that was considered to be discriminatory in Georgia.
Yeah,
and they said, no, we're going to do this. And they said, well, we're not having the All-Star game there if you're going to have that voting requirement.
And Georgia has that now.
Yeah, and their voter turnout is
just fine.
Yeah.
So the question is, will Newsom tell Los Angeles, or will Karen Bass say that Los Angeles will not host the Olympics? Because if they don't, then obviously they care more about the money that the Olympics would bring to the state than they do about the trans community, which they say they care so much about.
I think they will not deny the Olympics. I think the money is important. They will hurt a lot of people in their constituency if they were to do that. And I think, although Newsom is predictable, I don't know what to say about Karen Bass, but I think that they might like to have the issue taken out of their hands. And this is what strikes me about the IOC doing this. This is not an act of our government.
Oh, no, but now our government, the IOC is doing it. And so the question is whether or not California, which is a very trans state, will say, well, if you're going to insist of discriminating against trans people, you can't hold your Olympics in our state.
They could do that. I understand. I don't think they'll take that principled stand. What I'm saying is they may be glad to be relieved of it and say, some international authority has spoken, we're just going to go with that and hope that it goes away. But they will be betraying the cause
and
that they have.
And I think it will come up in debates. I do think that will come up for Newsom to answer if he runs for president, which I expect that he will. This one is fascinating. The University of Southern California, for quite some period of time, had been promising to host a gubernatorial debate, but they said at the beginning when they agreed to do this, when they said they would do it, it's going to be televised, it's going to be a big deal, that it would be the top four candidates, and they described how the top four candidates would be identified, would be selected. Well, it turns out the top four candidates are all Caucasian, and so USC has said, since there are no minorities in the top four, we're going to not hold the debate. I want your comment.
It's astounding.
Yeah. Now, to me, two of these are people who are running, who are Republicans who are running. It's a jungle primary. which means everybody runs in the same primary.
Yes.
And then if nobody gets 50%, then the top two advance to the finals.
Yes.
Okay, so it is conceivable that two Republicans or two Democrats, theoretically,
Run against each other.
and which has historically been in California, it's been two Democrats who've run against each other.
Yes.
But this time,
The
things are so
Democrat
bad.
vote is split so many ways.
Yeah, well,
right? There's a bunch of candidates.
There are
right?
nine Democrats running,
Yeah.
and there are two Republicans running. And the two Republicans are in the top four, and there are two white Democrats who are in the top four. Now, to me, the simple solution is for at least one of the white Democrats to identify as a minority. And then therefore that relieves USC of the burden of not having any minorities. They can just say, "Identify as one." Let's have the
me
debate.
as some kind of wild comedic play.
It's unfortunate. Well, but it's not. It's real life.
Yeah.
This is not something that happens on. This is not the Babylon Bee.
Well,
This is
California is capable of great absurdities.
Well, but a lot of what happens in California
Is absurd.
is
That's
absurd
what I
and gets
just
to
said.
the rest of the states. In other words, it doesn't stay there. It doesn't stay there, and that's what worries me more
I got
than
it.
your laugh.
Yeah.
All right, next up. Do you know who Robert Malone is? He is the person who and I don't know if invented is the right word, but discovered, invented. He was very involved in all this stuff having to do with the COVID vaccines, in knowing whether or not they were good or bad. And he warned people, don't take these vaccines.
I do not know much about him.
He had been appointed by Robert Kennedy to be part of the advisory committee, the advisory committee on immunization practices. And he is so angry with the bureaucracy and the lack of people being willing to even look at the facts to determine this that he's resigned, which is, to me, it's a very sad thing that a person who, and when he used to go on, I used to see him being interviewed regularly during COVID, and he would talk about what these COVID vaccines could do to people. And he didn't say they're, as a blanket, they're bad for everybody, but he would say, if you're 20 years old and you have no pre-existing conditions, this is not something you should take. And he gave all the reasons why. And so it's a sad thing to me that somebody who has a different perspective than the bureaucrats is essentially being chased out by the bureaucrats.
So my comment on that is that it's time for some renewal vaccinations. It's come up for me. Should I get another COVID shot? And I asked a neighbor who is a retired cardiologist. And I said, did you get the COVID shot? He said, no. And he told me why. He said there are some serious comorbidities that come along, and he doesn't think the risk of that is.
And he didn't have them. Well, the COVID vaccine did benefit people who had a bunch of comorbidities. Your cardiologist friend doesn't have them.
Yeah, maybe it's not the right word. What I'm saying is that it brings along some adverse events.
Yes.
Yeah, that he did not want to risk.
Right.
And some of the big athletes have done that. I don't want to risk having, my
Right.
body is my business. And,
Right.
And so he had one of the tennis players,
Djokovic.
drop out of a tournament because he wasn't.
No,
gonna be
he
forced-
didn't. He was not allowed to play in it. One of the major tournaments, he was not allowed to play.
Yeah, he would not submit to their rules that he be vaccinated
Right.
in order to get into the country.
Right.
My point is that there are these adverse events, and the level of coercion to dismiss that risk is pretty interesting to me.
Yeah.
And I have not had the next. I've had several. I believe the vaccines are important, and I took them in good faith that they were protecting me. I do believe in the principle of vaccination.
Okay.
But there's a lot of invention going on with these new ones, and there's some things that we quite don't know, and I'm kind of on the border. I decided not to get this latest one.
When you and I were little, when we were babies, we might have had 4, maybe 6 vaccinations as children.
Mumps,
Now
rubella,
it's
measles.
now it's in the dozens,
Is it?
and I worry about that.
Yeah.
I worry that I think there may be some unintended consequences that the cacophony of vaccines that young people take. So, and I've talked to medical professionals who there are 2 or 3 vaccines that they will have their own children take, and they don't give them the rest of them. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
So having somebody with a contrary point of view on an advisory committee be so frustrated that he just quits is sad to me.
It's so vital to have contrarian points of view.
Yeah, it is. It is. This one is fascinating to me. Christian pamphlet is hate speech, says the Finland Supreme Court. I'll just read the first sentence here. A 2004 pamphlet explaining traditional Christian views of sex and marriage is, quote, hate speech, unquote. Finland's Supreme Court ruled on March 26, fining a member of parliament, a Lutheran bishop, and a church group hundreds of dollars. Now, so it's not the money, it's the ruling that their pamphlet, which describes in their pamphlet a Christian view of sex and marriage, is hate speech. That's in Finland.
Europe in general has a lot more requirements or restrictions on expression. They do not have the tradition of free speech that we have here, although they claim to, and they seem to want to in some instances. They're very restrictive on speech.
And getting more so. Getting more so.
Yeah. Because the political consequences of saying certain things are undesirable. If you make critical comments of Islam, for instance, in England, or even talk about some of the scandals that they've had there, some of the crimes that have been done by unassimilated immigrants.
Right.
You can't talk about it.
Right. Not allowed to. It's illegal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, back to our point of contrarian point of view, is being marginalized, if not just eliminated.
And free speech is also an institution. It's one of the foundational principles underlying a free and prosperous society.
Yes.
And when that institution in fact, any of the four things mentioned in the First Amendment, and they're all under attack.
So we've been talking about authority. And authorities have one opinion. So this relates to diversity. This is a way in which diversity is really important. And it also relates to conscience, which we talked about in our last podcast, for people to be able to have the strength of their convictions and express them.
Yeah, exactly. This is a fascinating one. This is by James Freeman in the Wall Street Journal, far left versus farther left. I'll just read the first paragraph. Minneapolis is a city with high taxes, high rates of violent crime, and large numbers of students who are not proficient in math and reading. Then, of course, there are the shocking local examples of taxpayer fraud. So naturally, the Minneapolis City Council has been busy debating U.S. foreign policy.
Oh, that's so beautifully written.
So I just wanted to get your.
Well, it did. It did.
Want to get your comment on that.
The word that comes to mind is busybodies. Why don't you pay attention and handle your own business instead of messing around in other people's business?
Well, my comment is this: is that every one of those members of the city council who's a Democrat went through the deal with the local government employee unions. And government employee unions only care about those four things. Anything else you want to do that's silly, they don't care about. So if you want to debate foreign policy, that's fine. Just make sure that I get higher pay, higher benefits, more regulation, or more government employees, and more control of my work environment. And in Minneapolis, the government employee unions control that city. So it's interesting that that's how they would spend their time when the article lists all the problems that they need to solve that are actually theirs to solve.
It reminds me of some of the states that have taken up reparations, and they have commissions and all this, and then they measure damages, over 150 years ago, and then they come up with a number that said these people are entitled to, and then they say, we don't have the money, you're not going to get paid.
Yeah.
It's a kabuki dance.
Yep. Oh, yeah. Yeah. All right. And my next one here is this one is about Alex Swalwell. Kash Patel is pushing for
Is it Eric Swalwell? I think it's
Eric Swalwell. Yes. He's a congressman from California who is running for governor, and he's one of the four who would have been on the stage at USC if they had held the debate. But Eric Swalwell, as a member of Congress, has been one of the biggest proponents of releasing all of the Epstein files.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now Kash Patel is pushing for the release of the Fang Fang probe. And the Fang Fang probe is when Eric Swalwell, earlier in his life, there was a Chinese communist spy named Fang Fang who had, let's just say, befriended him.
Okay. I like these euphemisms.
Yeah. We try to add a few here.
Yes.
A little spice it up here. But befriended him.
Yes.
And so now Kash Patel is calling for the release of the Fang Fang file. And Eric Swalwell is protesting. this is the same person who called for the release of the Epstein files.
Transparency, yeah.
So I just thought that was kind of,
Transparency for thee and not for me.
yeah. There you go. There you go. Okay. This one is from Red State. Why are schools letting grown men share classrooms with teen girls? I went and did a search on this, and this is in Virginia. You can be 22 years old and still be attending high school in Virginia. And so I went and did a search, and in many states it's 19, which that kind of makes sense to me as a limit. But to be 22 years old, and in most states you can be 22 years old if English is your second language. And so I started thinking about that as an immigration issue, and also an economic issue and a cultural issue, every issue that you and I talk about. And I'm sitting there saying to myself, if people who can't speak English can remain in our high schools and use up the resources, scarce resources, and they can stay there until they're grown men, 22 years old, what is the purpose of public education? What is the goal? And the goal of most public educators today is not educating students. It's the political correctness that is entered into the way we think about education where the governments run the educational programs, not counting charter schools, these other things that have their own set of rules or private schools. But this is one where, so the story here is the episode takes a hard look at the dangerous consequences of policies that put teen girls at risk in the name of political ideology. I break down the disturbing case of a 19-year-old illegal immigrant who was allowed to remain in Fairfax County High School. I went and checked and could stay until he's 22, and accused of groping 9 different girls, and he's still there in the school. And the reason he's still there in the school is English is his second language, and so nobody wants to remove him from the school. So the safety of the girls in the school is just not. This gets back to when Trump asks Congress, if you think our job is to take care of American citizens more than illegal immigrants, please stand up. And not a single Democrat stood up. And this is an indication of that.
2 things occur to me. One is Susan and I sent our daughter to. Well, she chose. We didn't send her. She chose to go to an all-girls school. Okay. And she loved it. And part of it is it takes all of that stuff off the table. They don't have to dress up in the morning and impress the boys. All the leadership positions are among women. So you see other women doing things that you think maybe I can do that too. I think it was very good for her to take all of that innuendo, shall we say, off the table during her high school years. The other thing that occurs to me, though, is this mission distortion or creep. You know, I think of NASA during, I think, Obama's administration or maybe Biden's being assigned with a bunch of DEI objectives.
Yeah.
You know, the purpose of NASA was to go to the moon.
Right.
You know, we did that, and so it's still around looking for a mission. You know, maybe some other space-related stuff would make sense. But social injustice is not an appropriate...
Well, he DEI'd the whole military.
Yeah.
He told, you know, I mean...
Its mission also was not to achieve social justice, although it had, I know back in the mid-20th century, they were ahead of the curve in mainstreaming black soldiers.
Sure, but that was because they were competent, not because they were black.
Yeah, fair enough.
So I'm saying they had switched from a discriminatory against people who actually were qualified to do the job.
Yeah, I'm saying to their credit, they mainstreamed competent people,
yes,
as it should have. They should have. But you see a backlash now with Hexas saying we're a war machine.
Yeah,
we're a war machine. Our objective is to kill and destroy.
Right.
When we have to.
Yes.
And there's a clarity about that's refreshing, but alarming to some people who want it to be an instrument of social justice. But it's not the purpose of NASA or the military to create social justice in the United States.
Right. I'm not sure anything is to create social justice above meritocracy. You know, right now I'm enjoying watching March Madness, and I will promise you, at any time on the court are the players that the coach thinks is most likely to do the best under the circumstances. Not some, I'm going to make sure I've got enough short people and tall people and white people and black people and Chinese people.
If you judge things on that basis, our professional sports leagues are some of the most racist institutions in the country. Because black people are way overrepresented as their percentage of the population.
And
They're what, like 13% or something?
well,
You get. Well, I find no problem with that. They're the best players,
and more fun to watch.
As the way it should be. I want to see the best players.
Oh, you bet. Yeah, and I want to root for my team and hope my team wins, and I'm not paying attention. So, so this one is we talked about this one before, but I don't think I got your comment on it. This is about these No Kings protests. Which, by the way, one side note is members of Congress they don't go through the regular lines at airports.
Oh,
they have a separate line.
I think Delta shut one off.
Delta stopped that.
Yeah.
They said you're going to stand in line like everybody else. But I don't think they should. I think they should have to stand in line like everybody else if they believe in no kings, because I don't think they should be a king or a prince.
There's a general principle that the congressmen should live by the same rules that they impose on everybody else.
Right.
That seems to be a universally acceptable principle.
Yes.
Don't know why it's not.
Well, you and I both know why it's not.
Yeah, okay. Well,
Congress doesn't want it that way.
Right.
That's the nature. That's human nature.
Yes.
If you have power.
So, what's your question about the kings?
Okay. The $3 billion was spent. I read the article and then I went and did a search, and the search came up with the same thing. 500 groups. It's about 500 groups with an estimated $3 billion is what they spent on this last No Kings rally, which took place on one day.
Well, I mean, my first reaction is it sounds like rent a mob.
It is, and you can do that. By the way, you can search on that.
Rent a mob.
Yeah,
there are businesses.
You can rent a mob.
Yeah.
So
they make no bones about it. That's what they're for. They pay people to show up at a protest.
Yes, and hold the signs and do the chants. And but the media reports as if it's organic.
Yes.
So and they know it's not, which is very sad to me, and very frustrating. Makes me angry. This is interesting. The data in this is interesting. Headline: Hexef slashes faith codes in move to make chaplains the spiritual backbone of the U.S. military. Secretary of War Pete Hexef says his latest reforms will allow the Chaplain Corps to fulfill its mission of being the spiritual backbone of America's military. In 2017, the Pentagon issued a list of how many groups that qualify as a religious group. How many different groups did the military say you can have these rights as a religious group?
I saw this article, and I recall a number somewhere around 300 to 400.
221 groups.
Okay.
He has reduced it to 31.
Yeah.
And the 221 is an astounding number to me.
Well, it could be 4,000 if you keep subdividing Presbyterians and subdividing Baptists. And I know some good jokes about that, by the way.
You want to tell one?
Well, no, it's too long, and I'd have to refresh myself.
Okay.
But it's about some guys that meet, and they find out
jokes. We should include jokes here.
They're member of the same denomination, then they're a member of the same sect. Oh, and then they remember the same part of that sect, and then we're just alike. And then they find some arcane thing from hundreds of years ago where they differ on some little principle. Now they hate each other. Yeah, can't be in the same room. So my general reaction is, why do you need even 30?
Well, there are 30. I've not seen the list.
Yeah.
But there are 31. There are 31 now, not 221.
Well, it's better.
Yeah. Well, it'd be interesting, Mike, to us to pull that up and look at the 221. There's some. I would imagine that at least half and probably 2/3 are things we've never heard of. That now have some religious aspect to it that the military has to pay attention to. But it's been changed.
Okay.
So we're going to move on here to the next one. The governor of Oklahoma appointed, and this is just an interesting kind of little sidebar thing. He appointed somebody to replace Markwayne Mullin, who is now the senator of Oklahoma, who is now the
head of DHS.
Head of DHS. And he appointed somebody who in the past has been very anti-Trump. But what's interesting is under Oklahoma law, the governor has the right to appoint somebody to fill a seat. Whoever the
U.S. Senate.
Yes, but whoever the governor appoints cannot run for that seat in the next election.
Ah.
And Markwayne Mullin is up in 2026.
His seat is up.
His seat is up. So So Trump's the person who has received Trump's endorsement for the next election could not have been picked by the governor, or else he wouldn't have been able to be on the ballot in November. I just found that to be just kind of an interesting story about a state law, because each state has its own laws on this. I just found that to be interesting.
Yeah, it's an inside game. I saw something recently about coaches. It was about smart plays in baseball. Where these arcane rules. Like there was a guy on second base reading the pitch, looking into the pitcher's glove.
Yeah.
So the pitcher noticed this. He just dropped the ball, which is a balk, and so the runner goes to third. Now he can't see in his glove and can't signal to the batter what pitch is coming. It's a very smart use of the rule.
Well, he better not throw a wild pitch.
Well, yeah.
While he's on third, or you guys got to get home.
There's downsides to it. But the point is, the rules, and that's what all of these little examples in baseball were. It's really very interesting.
Yes. Baseball is boring until it's not. And the moments that it's not boring, the few moments that it's not boring, it is amazing. But you sit there watching a game that if the two pitchers are good, there's not much activity.
Well, there's an interior game. There's a bunch of signaling going on.
Yes.
If you know the pitch counts and all of the implications of those things, it's all in your mind.
Yeah.
And if you're just watching the ball to see whether they hit it, if that's all you know, it is pretty boring.
Yes. Well, Mike, the next one here is this one is sad, and we've got a video for this one. The headline here is Canada's healthcare system includes patient-assisted suicide, and it's expanding fast. That's the headline. So let me just read a little bit here, and then we'll go. This is not funny. This is something, and so this may take a few minutes of discussion. Canada legalized assisted suicide in 2016 for people who faced imminent death. Medical assistance in dying, MAID, allows a medical practitioner to end a person's life. Since then, Canada's expanded the program rapidly to more people. Starting in March of 2027, that's next year.
Thank you.
For you.
Yes, I appreciate that.
Canada will allow anyone age 18 or older who claims a mental illness to allow the state to kill them. You don't need to have a fatal or terminal condition to be eligible. Canada said 22,005, and Canada's population is less than 10% of ours. So to get a sense of this proportion, Canada has said that 22,535 people requested suicide in 2024, and 16,599 received it. And then the article goes on, but I want to show an ad that's running in Canada about this. It's an ad that the government is running.
Okay.
So listen to this ad. And so the people who are listening to this can hear it. People who are watching this can see the visual.
Okay.
Forests are sacred. When I imagine my final days, I see bubbles. I see the ocean. I see music. Even now, as I seek help to end my life, there is still so much beauty. You just have to be brave enough to see it.
So this is an advertisement
That's an
that the Canadian government is paying to run in Canada.
Yep, paying to run in Canada that is promoting suicide for young people. Because this ad is about young people. Everybody in that ad that you could see, and the voice was a young person. So this is if you're a little depressed for a few days, here's a choice you can make. And as a society, Canada's going nuts. There's things about Canada that are shocking to me.
Well, this would be one of them.
This is the most shocking of anything. And what is behind this is their healthcare system is so now overburdened, and they can't afford it. It's a national single payer national healthcare system, has all kinds of rules and regulations. But now what they're doing is, and they don't want to pay for mental health. They don't want to pay for counseling and mental health. So they're giving people an off-ramp that eliminates the cost of government by allowing the government to kill them. And they're promoting it with an ad did that ad seem to you to be promoting how wonderful it would be to make the decision and stand by your principles and kill yourself?
Well, it was all about the beauty of,
the beauty of dying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a little speechless, and I guess my opinion is that back to freedom of conscience. If I have suffering in front of me, if I have a terminal illness and there's nothing but agony, I would probably choose to end my own life.
That is different.
It's different, yeah. But your point is people in all kinds of altered mental states, maybe they took some drugs or whatever, or they're just depressed, is I think the example you had. Mm-hmm. It's really tragic where they're given these kinds of options.
There are polls where it says, have you ever felt so depressed that you've thought about taking your own life? There are polls that show like 20 to 30% will say, well, yeah, I've thought about it. That's a large number to be running ads to promote the idea of acting on your thoughts at that moment.
Right. I've heard stories of people who attempted suicide and failed.
Yeah.
Who said that as soon as they jumped, they got a very clear mind that this was a mistake.
Wow.
It was really interesting about their own mental state the process of
I've seen people who pronounced dead and then came back to life. They wasn't suicide.
Yeah.
But this is adding on to that. So that's interesting. But anyway, I just thought I would show that because it's and the next one I have here is teach high school students basic economics. This is from the Wall Street Journal, and I just find it to be fascinating. It says financial literacy isn't a standalone subject. It is applied economics. The foundation for teaching economics identifies 5 economic reasoning propositions that are at their core the engine beneath every personal financial decision. People choose. Choices involve costs. People respond to incentives. Institutions shape choices. And sound decisions are grounded in evidence. I thought it's a very short article. The only part that was in the foundation here was the power of innovation and the necessity of innovation to drive productivity, which is what drives prosperity. It wasn't articulated very well in those 5 principles.
So this is an article advocating for
teaching basic economics. Basic economics
as a separate course or embedded in other things.
Well, he goes on to say it's not being taught at all in anything. So,
well, fair enough. So, there's an argument about ethics, particularly at the graduate level. I went to a business school, and the question is, are people too old to be being taught ethics at that point? Because you have these scandals of, Enron and others where people were clearly beyond ethical boundaries, well-educated idiots.
Yes.
And so the question is, do you embed that in everything you do, or do you have a separate ethics course? You could say the same thing for finance.
I think that's a good question.
Yeah.
And I also think it's something that if you had much more freedom of the ability to open schools, I believe questions like that would be things that people who run schools would ask for the purpose of benefiting the students in their schools.
And they'd be experimenting.
And we would learn from competition.
Yeah, they'd be experimenting with different ways of approaching it and find better ones.
To get the best outcomes.
Yeah. One other thing I will say that interests me about this kind of topic is I think risk and probability are far under-taught. We're taught cause and effect.
Oh, yes.
And we've talked about this, I think, in a prior podcast. We're taught that A causes B, and if B is bad, then A must have been bad. It's not true. As we've said before, a good decision can produce a bad outcome, and a bad decision can yield a good outcome because there's chance and probability involved. Mm-hmm. I think we're way under-taught on that. We need to understand the contingencies of probability and statistics.
Yeah.
That'd be another.
Statistics is, yeah. This one is interesting. Democrats, this is from a search that I did on DuckDuckGo. And the search was Democrats want to stop the expansion of data centers. That was the search. There's the result. Democrats, particularly progressive lawmakers like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and Bernie Sanders, are advocating for a moratorium on new data centers until safeguards are established to protect workers, consumers, and the environment. Now, this push reflects growing public concern over rising electricity prices and the environmental impact of these facilities. Now, what is your take? I have a specific take on that statement about which of those 3 things protect workers, consumers, and the environment. Which of those 3 things is Bernie Sanders and Ocasio-Cortez and actually it's a subgroup of one of those.
Well, why don't you tell me? I'm
Okay.
inclined to say groups.
I believe
the,
AI. I believe AI
people.
will eventually be able to eliminate many government jobs.
Yeah.
And AI doesn't pay union dues. And so I think that Bernie Sanders and AOC are doing what they think is best for government employee unions' longer-term future by opposing the expansion of AI, which is critical to increases in productivity and probably critical to our national security.
Well, my general reaction is AI is moving so fast. There are so many consequences of it that we just can't understand.
Right.
And it's a huge problem. We've had this controversy with what is the AI group that's been banned from military, from government use?
Well, they're not now. Anthropic.
I think it's their Anthropic.
Yeah, Anthropic, and that's now being, I think, resolved because the CEO of Anthropic did not want the military to use Anthropic for certain things. I think I got that right. But I think that's getting resolved now.
Yeah, so the objection was you don't get to tell us as a supplier what we do as a customer, Right. And there's a reasonable principle there. Who's sovereign? But I think the concern was legitimate because they know that the technology is not reliable to be entrusted with certain things like autonomous missiles and things like that, where they may hallucinate and have horrible consequences. So it's a real problem, and I think it's like the problems of industrialization. Marx and all that were interpretations that were kind of moving into a hellscape because people were coming out of feudal starvation into these nasty factories, and so capitalism was seen as nasty factories.
Yeah, but that was the nasty factories were better.
They were better than starvation.
Better than starvation.
Yeah, and look where it led. I mean, it was an incremental step toward a different future.
Yes.
And I think you have similar themes going on with AI, and the difficult
I think that's
part.
a really good analogy, by the way.
Yeah.
That's good because these people who say AI is going to destroy everybody's job, I think that's false. That's the same. The Luddites said the same thing.
Sure.
And then the way you're describing it is during the Industrial Revolution. I think AI is going to make certain jobs. It will eliminate certain jobs and create other jobs.
I think it will certainly eliminate the jobs of people who refuse to use AI. If you don't learn it, you're going to get cut out of a job.
That's true.
But the people that learn it and use it will be way more productive, and they will have jobs.
Yes, and then there'll be. And those people will be way more productive.
Way more productive.
And therefore, more productive people will have certain demands that less productive people do not have today. And that'll be the other jobs that are created from AI, is the new demands by the more productive people.
Right.
Will have other things that they desire and that they can afford to pay for.
And we can boil this discussion down to one word, still pursue, and that's autonomy.
Yes.
Because a lot of AI is intended to be autonomous and work without any human intervention. And so that's where the worry comes in. What kind of ethical considerations and controls do you put on it? And what we're describing is not autonomous AI, but hybrid human AI.
And I'm also getting into why is the left more determined to why are the Democrats more determined to regulate AI, and I think it's to protect the jobs of their main constituency, which is government employees, because AI should be able to be used to ferret out fraud. Should really be able to identify fraud at a very early stage.
Right.
There ought to be certain indicators that there's certain things. If you see certain things, bank credit card companies have all kinds of little indicators that might be fraud. And so they check on it immediately, just like that. They don't wait 2 years. They check on it immediately to try to stop it, because if it is fraud, it's going to grow. And so they try to catch it, because I get texts from time to time. Did I charge such and such?
Right.
And if the answer is yes, press 1. If the answer is no, call this number, because somebody did.
In starting new businesses, you and I both know that the task is to fail fast. If an idea is bad, you want it to be quick and cheap.
Yes.
Right. And I think there's an analogy to use in AI that you need to try things, and if they're not working, cut them off fast. Just be very alert. The sure way to be behind is to never try.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree. All right. Okay, we're going to move to the next one. This one's just kind of an interesting little thing here. And the headline is the Democrats' sneaky new trick, the Indy imitation game. Indy not being Indianapolis 500, but the independent. There are now 5 Democrats who are running for the Senate in red states as an independent because their brand is the Democrat brand is so damaged
in those states.
In those states that to run and
Tennessee
have any
would
chance
be one of them. If you run as a Democrat, you're behind the 8 ball in Tennessee.
Correct, and you're not going. You have no chance.
Yeah.
But in these particular ones, there are 5. There are 5 states in Idaho, and this the name here. I'm not making this up. The Republican is Jim Risch, and he's being challenged by Independent Theodore Todd Achilles.
Okay.
Yeah, and he is running as Achilles is running as an independent.
I guess it's his real name.
Theodore
must be Greek.
Theodore B. Todd Achilles.
Yeah.
Yes, and in Mississippi, he's being challenged by the Republican is being challenged by Ty Pickens. Pickens is a U.S. Army veteran and the son of Mississippi farmers who unsuccessfully ran for the Senate as a Democrat in 2024. Now he's running as an independent. In Montana, Senator Steve Daines initiated his own trick to retire on the last day of filing to make his favorite candidate the most likely GOP nominee. Kurt Alme, A-L-M-E, think that's Alme?
That's a good guess.
Okay. The U.S. attorney for Montana. Alme, however, is being challenged by an independent, Seth Bodner, a former Green Beret and president of University of Montana, who seems to have the backing of the last Democrat senator, John Tester. Tester reportedly texted his support for Bonner and stated, quote, "Every race I ran as Montana senator and U.S. senator, it was about distancing myself from the Democratic Party. During my last 2 races, the Democrat Party was poisoned in my attempts to get reelected." So the obvious answer is don't be authentic. Run as an independent.
Well, in a conservative state, that's more respectful of tradition, and they really are hurt by the shenanigans of progressives in places like California and Chicago and Minnesota and New York.
But here's my question. Why can Democrats do that and Republicans can't?
Well, is it true that Republicans can't, or they just don't?
Can you think of any Republicans who?
Well, maybe they don't need to. Maybe in those states. Now,
I'm talking about why don't they try it in the blue state?
Yeah.
Why don't
maybe
they?
They should.
Well, no. Why don't they?
I don't know. You tell me.
My answer is government employee unions don't care whether or not you run as an independent or not, as long as you agree to the 4 pledges.
Yeah.
And so these independents, these so-called independents, will get lots of government employee union money to run their races. And so
in red states.
And if you're a Republican running as an independent, the Republican Party is not there to help you.
Right.
And
neither are those advocate groups.
Yeah. And so that's that little piece. I just thought I would throw a little log.
You're
on the
probably
fire.
right. Once again,
Bless your heart. Okay, this is the last one.
Okay.
And this is one we're going to talk about longer. But I just wanted to kind of, as more Americans adjust their lives due to healthcare costs, and this is drug companies gut programs that help. I'm not going to be talking so much about the drug companies that gut programs, as much as what the cost of healthcare is doing to many, many, many millions and tens of millions of Americans. So just listen to this for a second here to get your opinion here. And this is from Red State. Red Health and Gallup surveyed 20,000 adults and found that almost 70 million Americans delayed a surgery or other medical treatment during the period. Delaying care is not a neutral condition to worsen. That leads to more drugs, more tests, higher costs, and sooner death if it's a really serious problem. But they delayed it out of the cost of the procedure, even though you have all this vast insurance. And then an estimated 46 million Americans delayed changing jobs because of the health care costs. 46 million Americans feel tied to their job, and that's not good. That is not a good thing.
And it's a result of policy.
Yeah,
You should be able to have
we've talked
insurance, that's not tied to your job.
Well, it's not just that. It's not just tied to the job. It might be that the insurance that you get at your existing job is better than the insurance that you would get at another job where you're getting higher pay and more fulfillment in life, but you're stuck in the current job because your health care benefits are greater.
Right.
And 40 million scrapped plans for additional education or training. 37 million put off buying a home. 1/3 of Americans, roughly 82 million, cut back on at least one daily expense to cover medical bills. The normal income breakdown makes clear that this is not just a lower income problem. About half of households earning between $48,000 and $180,000 put off at least one major life decision because of health care costs. 1/3 of households making between $180,000 and $240,000 do the same. Even above $240,000, 1 in 4 adults said health care costs forced them to defer something significant. And so when politicians talk about affordability, this is the issue that drives all the others because it is now something that costs the average family, whether they're healthy or not, over $20,000 a year if they are not subsidized by the federal government. And then if they're subsidized by the federal government, it's less, but it adds to the debt, so it affects everybody in a negative way.
One first level of thought is this is generally responded to with the idea that having to choose between health care and the rent, or eating and being healed. Any other two comparisons you want to make is immoral, and you shouldn't have to choose. You should have all of those things. The truth in life is we have to make all kinds of choices. Always make choices. That's what markets are for. And if I want to educate my kids and I take risks for myself, maybe I sacrifice my own living standard for now, that's up to me. And I should be able to make those trade-offs. The evil I find in this is coercion that disables you from making a choice.
Correct. And it's the government policies that force this gigantic third-party system that itself is so incredibly expensive. And I estimate it's at least half the cost of health care is the third-party payment system. And we've talked about this before.
Yes, we've said.
But we're going to talk about it again.
Yeah, well, it's so pervasive.
Yeah.
But to me, a lot of it boils down to being forced to buy things you otherwise would not buy if you were spending your own money.
And you're required to.
Well, that's what it means to be forced to buy it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Touche. Yeah.
Good for you. Well, Michael, those are all of my little tidbits. So this podcast was a little different. I think we covered about 15 little topics. I enjoyed it.
It's kind of fun.
Yeah, all right. I enjoyed it. And
we'll do it again.
Maybe someday we'll let you pick the 15 topics and I get to sit in your chair, which is...
that'll be even more fun.
Yeah, there you go.
All right.
All right, we'll see you later.
Bye.